And we'll start with Claire in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Hi, Matt.
How are you? I was just there.
Really?
I spoke at University of North Dakota in Grand Forks and flew through Minneapolis, St. Paul.
I'm kind of sad now. Oh well.
It was really cold.
I have to point out one thing before I start, that you're underestimating the discount chocolate after Easter.
But I'm diabetic, so I don't care.
Well, point taken, but for the vast majority of college-age kids, come on.
Yeah, I get enough candy around Halloween to last all the way through Easter. So.
Okay, fair enough. So I've been having trouble visualizing the concept of nothingness when people say you can't make something out of nothing. Okay, sure, but I've never experienced nothing. There's nothing that I can see that is actually nothing.
Right.
I imagine that the black stuff in space is something, right?
Well, so there's this concept of absolute nothingness, and Tracy's made this point before, that we don't have a nothingness with which we can experiment. And by definition, nothing is something that you couldn't experiment on. There's nothing there to do something with. So, the high-level concept of you can't get something from nothing, the way we normally think of nothingness would be correct. In the sense that we can't demonstrate that it's true, but there doesn't seem to be any way to do anything to nothing. And it may be the case that nothingness doesn't and couldn't exist, which is, it's a mess of a concept.
Right. And then you get to the higher levels of, like, the omniverse concept, which is completely theoretical, but then we're contained in a bubble, contained in another bubble, contained in another bubble of infinity, and that's weird. It
is.
Infinity is a hard concept for me to grasp, too, along with nothingness, I would say.
Yeah, and they kind of go hand in hand. Yeah. Everything and nothing. But yeah, so yes, they're incredibly difficult, muddled, confusing concepts. But until somebody demonstrates some reason, why we have to spend a great deal of time focusing on them, I just acknowledge that they're difficult concepts that have usefulness in limited applications, small doses, maybe not at all.
Fair enough. I just wanted to bring it up because some theists might hear it and, maybe that's not the best argument to go from.
Yep.
Anyway, just one other thing that I had thought about today is I was talking to a theist on the computer, and I realized that in a way, Jesus might be a Mary Sue.
Okay, how so?
Because if you consider the Old Testament, there's a hard-lined concept for God, and he has an attitude defined within the context of the Old Testament. But then you get to the New Testament, and there's a complete shift in tone, and you have this character who can do every power imaginable, and everyone has to love him. And he's kind of derivative from other cultures as well. So that, to me, kind of says, well, he's just a cliche. He's the fan character from the first century.
It could be. I think there's a lot more depth to the Jesus character than that, because there's the building a lash and taking out the money changers in the temple, and bring my enemies before me, and I'll slaughter them, and actually the concepts that are presented there are far harsher than what's in the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, there's a reason why Judaism doesn't have a really firm view of what an afterlife is, because in the Old Testament, when you died, you slept with your fathers. That was kind of the end of it. There wasn't a lot of talk about places to go in an afterlife. And the New Testament implements this idea of eternal life and or eternal torture, and the criteria for it. So I think it might be a little more fleshed out than that. But certainly there's aspects to that match what you're saying.
Okay. One final thing is I want to ask you about Joseph and the story, because I like the DreamWorks version of Joseph, the cartoon version.
I don't know the DreamWorks version.
And I'm not fond of the way that, like, the second half of The Prince of Egypt, which is the Exodus story, once they start killing the firstborn and the plagues, I just want to turn it off, all right? But the first Joseph story that they did was actually pretty good, and I have no objections to it. So I want to know if there's anything particularly objectionable in the Joseph story that they just kind of, didn't mention in the movie.
I don't know the movie that you're talking about, and I don't know which Joseph it's actually the story of. So
Joseph with the 12 brothers, and they sell him off into slavery.
So there's a movie that made that unobjectionable?
No, I actually like that movie, so I'm wondering if the story in the Bible is, worse than the squeaky clean DreamWorks version.
I don't know. I haven't seen it.
Okay, well, never mind then.
Okay. Maybe I'll watch it someday.
All right.
But
Well, if you ever do, can you just post a blog about it?
yeah, if I actually sit through some Bible-related thing, you can bet I'll post something on Facebook. Because today, we were talking about the Christmas with a capital C, and whether or not it's as terrible as some people say, because they actually supposedly got the law right in there, and came to some.
To DreamWorks' credit, it's a really good-looking movie. So
But it's DreamWorks,
passable
so I
as a
would expect
film,
that.
But, oh well.
Cool. Well, thanks, Claire. I appreciate the call.
No problem. Have a good day.
You too.
Did you say Mary Sue?
It's a literary device. It's a kind of a fictional character that comes in and changes stuff. I don't know the exact definition of it. I was going to pull it out of her, but
I'll have to look that up because that was new to me.
what she was describing was I don't think completely matches at least my perception of the way Jesus is portrayed. So.